Story number 1. Jimmy lived in the country, and he loved playing in a very shallow river near his house. But then his father got a job in a big city, and he moved there with his family. Their new house had a garden, but the garden was very small. Jimmy wasn't very happy. "Is there a river near here?" he asked his mother on the first morning. His mother answered, "No, there isn't. But there's a beautiful park near here, Jimmy, and there's a pool in it. We'll go there this afternoon." Then Jimmy was happy. After lunch, Jimmy and his mother went to the park. Jimmy wanted to walk near the pool, but there was a sign in front of it. His mother read it to him. "Warning: this pool is dangerous. 367 people have fallen into it." Jimmy looked into the pool carefully. Then he said, "I can't see them."
Now answer these questions. 1. Where did Jimmy play in the country? 2. Why wasn't he happy in the city? 3. What did he ask his mother? 4. What did she answer? 5. What did the sign in front of the pool say? 6. What did Jimmy say when his mother read the sign to him? Story number 2. Mrs. Green was an old lady. She traveled often, and she wasn't afraid of flying. One day, she was going from Chicago to San Francisco in a big plane. There were a lot of empty seats on it. Mrs. Green's seat was near a window. There was a young man on the other side of the aisle. He was near a window, too. Mrs. Green looked at the young man several times. "He's always looking at the engine outside his window," she thought. She got up and walked around in the plane for a few minutes. Then she sat down and looked at the young man again. "Yes," she thought, "he's looking at that engine all the time." After half an hour, Mrs. Green went over to him and said, "Take a walk around the plane, young man. I'm going to watch that engine for you for a few minutes."
Now answer these questions. 1. How did Mrs. Green go from Chicago to San Francisco? 2. Where did she sit? 3. Where was the young man sitting? 4. What was he doing? 5. What did Mrs. Green want him to do? 6. What did she offer to do for him when he wasn't in his seat? Story number 3. It was a Saturday morning in May. When Mrs. Edwards opened her curtains and looked out, she smiled and said, "It's going to be a beautiful day." She woke her small son up at 8:30 and said to him, "Get up, Teddy. We're going to go to the zoo today. Wash your hands and face, brush your teeth, and eat your breakfast quickly. We're going to go to New York by train." Teddy was 6 years old. He was very happy now because he liked going to the zoo very much, and he also liked going by train. He said, "I dreamed about the zoo last night, Mommy." His mother was in a hurry, but she stopped and smiled at her small son. "You did, Teddy?" she said. "And what did you do in the zoo in your dream?" Teddy laughed and answered, "You know, Mommy. You were there in my dream, too."
Now Answer these questions. 1. What did Mrs. Edwards say when she looked out of the window? 2. Why was Teddy happy? 3. What did Teddy dream about? 4. What did Mrs. Edwards ask Teddy? 5. What did Teddy answer? Story number 4. Polly went to school when she was 6 years old. She liked her first day very much. Her teacher, Miss Yates, was very nice, and the other children in her class were nice too. But at the end of the second day, when the other children left the classroom, Polly stayed behind and waited. Miss Yates had some work to do and did not see Polly at first, but then she looked up and saw her. "Why didn't you go with the others, Polly?" she asked kindly. "Did you want to ask me a question?" "Yes, Miss Yates," Polly said. "What is it?" Miss Yates asked. "What did I do in school today?" Polly said. Miss Yates laughed. "What did you do in school today?" she said. "Why did you ask me that, Polly?" "Because I'm going to go home now," Polly answered, "and my mother's going to ask me."
Now answer these questions. 1. Why did Polly like her school? 2. What did she do when the other children went home? 3. What did Miss Yates say when she saw her? 4. What question did Polly ask Miss Yates? 5. What did Miss Yates ask then? 6. What was Polly's answer? Story number 5. Jean was traveling around New England by car. One day she stopped in a small village to look at a beautiful old church. There was a cemetery in front of it, and an old man was raking the grass around the graves. Jean got out of her car, went into the cemetery, and looked at some of the graves. Then she went over to the old man and said to him, "Good morning. Do people often die in this village?" The old man stopped working for a few seconds, looked at Jean carefully, and said, "No, they die once." Jean laughed when she heard this, and then said to the old man, "I'm sorry. I didn't say that correctly. I'll ask it differently. Do a lot of people die in this village?" The old man stopped his work again. "Yes," he said, "all of them do." Then he began raking the grass again.
Now answer these questions. 1. Why did Jean stop in the village? 2. What did she see in front of the church? 3. What did she say to the old man? 4. What did he answer? 5. What did Jean say then? 6. What did the old man answer? Story number 6. When George was 35, he bought a small plane and learned to fly it. He soon became very good and made his plane do all kinds of tricks. George had a friend. His name was Mark. One day, George offered to take Mark up in his plane. Mark thought, "I've traveled in a big plane several times, but I've never been in a small one, so I'll go." They went up, and George flew around for half an hour and did all kinds of tricks in the air. When they came down again, Mark was very glad to be back safely, and he said to his friend in a shaking voice, "Well, George, thank you very much for those 2 trips in your plane." George was very surprised and said, "2 trips?" "Yes, my first and my last," answered Mark.
Now answer these questions. 1. What did George learn to do when he was 35? 2. Who went up with him in his small plane? 3. What did George do while they were in the air? 4. What did Mark say when they were on the ground again? 5. What did George say then? 6. What did Mark answer? Story number 7. Bill and Fred were students at a university and they were friends. They didn't have much money, so when it was time for their summer vacation, Bill said, "Let's take our vacation in a trailer, Fred. It's cheaper than a hotel. I can borrow my father's trailer." Fred was very happy, so they got into the trailer and began their vacation. They wanted to get up early the next day to go fishing, but they didn't have an alarm clock. "That's all right, Bill," Fred said. "I'll put these small pieces of bread on the roof of the trailer tonight, and they'll wake us up in the morning." Bill was very surprised, but he didn't say anything. Fred was right. As soon as it began to get light, small birds came down to eat the bread, and their noise on the roof of the trailer woke Bill and Fred up very quickly.
Now answer these questions. 1. What did Bill say to Fred when it was time for their summer vacation? 2. Why did they want to get up early one day? 3. Why didn't they set their alarm clock? 4. What did Fred do that evening? 5. What happened in the morning? Story number 8. Kate and Jenny went to school together for several years and were friends. Kate had a younger sister, but Jenny didn't have any brothers or sisters. Then Kate and Jenny left school, and after a few years, both of them got married and had children. They didn't live near each other now. Both of them were busy with their families, so they didn't see each other until Kate's sister got married. One day, Kate and Jenny met in the city while they were shopping. They talked for some time, and then Jenny said to Kate, "How's your sister getting along with her new husband?" "Oh, fine, Jenny," Kate answered quickly. "There's only one little thing." "Oh, what's that?" asked Jenny. "Well, she hates him," said Kate. "But there's always something wrong with everything, isn't there? Nothing's ever perfect."
Now answer these questions. 1. Why didn't Kate and Jenny see each other for some time? 2. What were they doing when they met in the city? 3. What did Jenny ask Kate? 4. And what did Kate answer? 5. What was the one thing that was wrong? Story number 9. Al Brown was very good at fixing things around the house when they broke. One day he went to another city to do some work there, and his wife was alone in the house. While Mr. Brown was away, one of the faucets on the bathtub broke. Mrs. Brown didn't know much about fixing broken faucets, so she telephoned a plumber. The plumber came to the house that afternoon and fixed the faucet in a few minutes. When he finished, he gave Mrs. Brown his bill for the work. She looked at it for several seconds and then said, "Your prices are very high, aren't they? Do you know, the doctor costs less than this when he comes to the house." "Yes, I know," answered the plumber. "I know that very well, because I was a doctor until I was lucky enough to find this job a few months ago."
Now answer these questions. 1. Why didn't Mr. Brown fix the broken faucet in his bathroom? 2. Why didn't his wife fix it? 3. Who did fix it? 4. How long did it take him? 5. What did Mrs. Brown say when she saw the plumber's bill? 6. What did the plumber answer? Story number 10. When Mary Smith was a student, she always wanted to become a teacher because she liked children. When she was 21 years old, she began teaching in a small school. She was a good teacher, and she laughed a lot with the children in her class. They enjoyed her teaching. One day, one of the girls in her class said to her, "Miss Smith, why does a man's hair become gray before his mustache and beard do?" Mary laughed and answered, "I don't know, Helen." "Why does it become gray before his mustache and beard do?" "I don't know either, Miss Smith," answered Helen, "but it happened to my father." The other children in the class laughed when they heard this. Then one of the boys said, "I know, Miss Smith. Men's hair becomes gray first because it's 16 years older than their mustaches and beards."
Now answer these questions. 1. Why did Mary want to be a teacher? 2. Why did her students enjoy her teaching? 3. What did Helen ask her? 4. Did Mary know the answer? 5. What did Helen say then? 6. And what did one of the boys say?